The night she was rejected, the restaurant lights felt too bright, too cruel, reflecting off the polished tables like they were witnesses to something quietly broken. I noticed her before I noticed myself noticing her. She sat at the far corner, hands folded tightly in her lap, shoulders drawn inward as if she were trying to take up less space in a world that already ignored her too easily. Her eyes kept searching faces, not for attention, but for understanding. When the man across from her stood up abruptly, shaking his head with awkward embarrassment and leaving money on the table like compensation for wasted time, something heavy settled in my chest. I didn't know her name. I didn't know her story. But in that moment, I knew one thing with painful clarity: this world had just reminded her, once again, that it wasn't built for people like her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles, because stories like this remind us that small moments can change entire lives. I wasn't supposed to be there that evening. I had gone out only because loneliness has a way of pushing you into places you don't really want to be, convincing you that maybe, just maybe, something different might happen. I was a man carrying my own invisible disappointments, the kind that don't show on the surface but sit heavy in the heart. I had failed relationships behind me, a career that paid the bills but never filled the emptiness, and a growing fear that life was slowly becoming a routine of quiet survival rather than meaning. So when I saw her, rejected not loudly but painfully politely, something inside me stirred that I hadn't felt in years. She didn't cry. That was what struck me the most. She simply sat there, eyes fixed on the empty chair across from her, breathing slowly, as if she had practiced this moment before. As if rejection had become familiar enough to prepare for. The waiter approached her, speaking too quickly, gesturing awkwardly when he realized she didn't respond. She looked at his lips, trying to read what he was saying, nodding even when she wasn't sure she understood. It was then I realized she was deaf. Not the kind of deaf people romanticize in movies, but the real kind that isolates you in crowded rooms, that turns simple conversations into exhausting puzzles, that makes rejection sting twice as hard because it's often wrapped in misunderstanding. I didn't approach her immediately. I sat there, wrestling with my own hesitation, afraid of seeming pitiful or intrusive. But when she stood up, shoulders slumped, gathering her bag with trembling hands, I knew I would regret staying silent more than I would regret saying something awkward. I moved toward her slowly, careful not to startle her, making sure she could see me. When our eyes met, there was a flicker of surprise, followed by guarded caution. I gestured gently, simple movements, nothing fancy, just enough to show I meant no harm. She tilted her head slightly, curious despite herself. I told her, not with words but with sincerity, that she didn't deserve to be treated like that. I told her that sometimes people reject what they don't understand, not because it lacks value, but because they lack patience. She read my lips carefully, her focus intense, and when she understood, something in her expression softened. Not happiness, not yet, but relief. The kind that comes when someone finally sees you. We sat back down, not as a date, not even as strangers pretending to be something else, but as two tired souls sharing a table that had already witnessed disappointment. Communication wasn't easy. It was slow, clumsy at times, filled with pauses and misunderstandings. But instead of frustration, there was laughter. Instead of embarrassment, there was effort. I learned quickly that connection doesn't require perfection, only intention. She told me about her life through written notes and careful lip reading. She had been deaf since childhood. She grew up learning to adapt, to watch faces closely, to read emotions in eyes rather than voices. Dating had always been hard. People were intrigued at first, then overwhelmed. Some treated her like a burden. Others treated her like a project. Very few treated her like a person. That blind date had been her attempt to try again, to believe that maybe this time would be different. As the night stretched on, the restaurant emptied. Chairs stacked. Lights dimmed. Yet we stayed, lost in a quiet bubble where time seemed less important than presence. I noticed the way she smiled with her whole face, the way her hands moved expressively even when she wasn't signing, the way she listened with an intensity most hearing people never bother to learn. And somewhere between shared silences and scribbled notes, I felt something shift inside me. Not romance in the dramatic sense, but respect. Admiration. A sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. When it was time to leave, she hesitated, as if unsure whether this moment was real or just another temporary kindness. I told her, slowly and clearly, that I thought she would make a different kind of wife someday. Not because she was deaf, but because she had learned things most people never do. Patience. Observation. Resilience. The kind of love that doesn't rely on words alone. She looked at me for a long moment, eyes glistening, then smiled in a way that felt like gratitude mixed with disbelief. Our lives didn't magically transform overnight. There was no sudden fairy tale ending. We met again, and again after that. Each meeting came with challenges. Miscommunications. Awkward moments in public. People staring. People speaking to me instead of her, assuming she couldn't understand anything. I watched her endure these moments with quiet strength, and sometimes with exhaustion. I learned to stand beside her, not in front of her, not as her interpreter unless she asked, but as her partner in presence. I struggled too. I had to confront my own impatience, my reliance on sound, my habit of filling silence instead of respecting it. There were moments I felt overwhelmed, moments I questioned whether love should be this hard. But then I would remember how easily people walk away when things aren't convenient, and how rare it is to find someone worth slowing down for. As months passed, our connection deepened. I learned basic sign language, not fluently, but enough to tell her how I felt without pen and paper. She taught me that listening isn't about ears, but about attention. About noticing when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. About understanding pain even when it isn't spoken. She showed me that love can be quiet and still powerful, gentle and still unbreakable. There was a moment that changed everything. We were at a family gathering, loud and chaotic. She stood slightly apart, watching conversations she couldn't fully join. I saw the familiar shadow cross her face, the one that comes when you feel invisible. Without thinking, I took her hand and guided her into the circle, slowing everyone down, making space. Not announcing her, not explaining her, just including her. Later, she wrote to me that it was the first time she felt truly chosen, not tolerated, but wanted. That night, I understood that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistent presence. Eventually, I realized something profound. The world hadn't rejected her because she was lacking. It rejected her because it didn't know how to value someone who communicates differently. And in loving her, I wasn't doing something noble or heroic. I was simply choosing to see what others overlooked. Near the end of this story, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this journey touched you, if it reminded you that love doesn't always arrive loudly, that kindness can heal wounds we don't talk about, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in empathy, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles. Your engagement helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. In the end, she didn't just become a different kind of wife. She became a different kind of teacher. She taught me that love isn't about fixing someone or being fixed. It's about meeting in the middle, even when the middle is quiet. And if this story moved you, please comment below with a single line about what kindness means to you. Sometimes, one line is enough to remind someone they're not alone.